Hi, in this video series I'm going to build a web application for creating and sending invoices to your clients. The web application will be built with Django and Django Rest Framework, and there will be a separate front-end built with Vue 3. The web application will contain a lot of functionality like authentication, and there will be a dashboard where you can add clients and you can add invoices and send them directly to your clients via email. And there will also be possible to add credit notes for the invoices, send reminders, add payments, etc. So you'll have a good overlook over your whole company. I will build this web application from scratch and then deploy it to a live server when everything is finished. So let's open up my editor and get started. Okay, so I have the to-do list here of what we're going to go through today. First, we're going to create a virtual environment and activate it. I have a terminal ready here to do it. To create one, I say virtual env, and then the name, which is invoicely, which is the name of this project, and then env, just so I know that this is environment folder. Hit enter. Virtual environment is very important because every package we now install will just be for this project, and it's also much easier for deployment later because then we can have a similar setup locally and on the live server. So now that it's created, I can go into it by saying cd invoicely env and activate it by saying source bin/activate. And now it's activated because this is prefixed here. Perfect. And then I can set this task to done because now the virtual environment is ready. Next step now is to install Django and Vue libraries. Can begin with Django pip install Django. This will install the newest version of Django and also a few dependencies that Django has. Great. And then we can install Djoser, which is a library for helping us with authentication and tokens. Pip install Djoser. Great. Then we can install the Django Rest Framework, which is a library for helping us build the API. Pip install Django-Rest Framework. And then the last thing we need to install is Django course headers. No, Django course. Pip install Django course headers. Pip install Django course headers. This is supposed to be like that. Great, so now everything there is installed and ready. So I can set this task to done. The project is now open here to the left, but there are no Django projects there yet. To create one, we just say Django-admin start project invoicely and hit enter. Then I can go into it, so we are in the root folder. In the root folder is one file called manage.py. This is a script for running administrative tasks like initializing the database, creating a super admin user, and similar. And we also got a new folder called invoicely inside there, which contains a few more files. The WSGI and ASGI files are entry points for the web server. The urls.py is a table of contents of all the pages we have in this project. And the settings.py is globally configurations for the whole project. So then I can set this to done. And now we're going to configure the project. It's not too much to do yet, but we can go into settings.py. Okay, first we can configure the course headers. To do this, we say course allowed origins equals, this is a list, http://localhost 8080. This is the address for the front end. And I can also add http://127.001.8000 in case there's a little bit difference from Windows to Mac and similar. Sorry, this was supposed to be a list like this, not a dictionary. And I can also configure the REST framework. REST framework equals, and this is supposed to be a dictionary, and inside here I add default authentication classes and create a tuple like that. Rest underscore framework dot authentication dot token authentication, because I want to use token authentication for the Rest framework. And I need to add one more, default permission classes, new tuple, rest framework dot permissions dot is authentic, because I want to require that to get data from the database you need to be authenticated. And then if I scroll down to install apps, this is a list of installed apps that Django needs to know about. You first add rest underscore framework and rest framework dot auth token and course headers. This is the libraries we installed earlier, and Djoser. And to make sure that the course headers are working, we need to add as middleware so that Django knows to use this before it uses some of the other code. So here above the common middleware, we add course headers dot middleware dot course middleware and save. And then I think this should be finished, because now we have created the session, know the different variables and everything we need here. Perfect. Then the last task on the Django part is to add Djoser URLs to the URLs file. So first I can just remove this here, like that. And here I want to import one more function called include, which comes from django.urls, and below admin I say path API/v1, which is version 1. When we're going to that URL, I want to include djoser.urls, and one more path API/v1 include djoser.urls.auth token and save. So now we can set this task as well to done. Just to see that everything is okay, I want to initialize the database by saying python manage.py migrate. And yes, it seems that everything here is okay. Perfect. But we can also run the development server by saying python manage.py run server. This will start the development server we can use in this project until we go live. Great. So now that everything there is okay, we can go and continue with the Vue. Before I continue, I just want to say thanks to my Patreons. If you too want to support me, you will find a link to my Patreon in the description below. To do that, I just want to open up a terminal. I like to use iterm. And if I go into cd, documents, invoice, here I want to create that project. But before we can create that project, we need to install the Vue CLI. And to install Vue now, I just say npm install-g at vue/CLI. This will install the newest version of the CLI, or command line interface, as is also called. Okay, I got a little error, but I think it will be working here anyways. So then I want to install two dependencies as well. npm install Bulma, which is the CSS framework we're going to use. Then we can set this task to done. Next, I want to create a new Vue project. To do that, I say Vue create, and then the name, which is just invoice Vue, just so I can separate this a little bit. Hit enter. And I want to manually select features we are going to use. and I want to use Babel, and I want to use the router, Vuex, and CSS preprocessors, and I can just remove this linter. I hit enter, and I want to use 3.x preview, which is Vue 3. And yes, I want to use history mode. And I can use sass with Dart sass. And I want to save this in dedicated config files. But I don't need to save this preset for another project, so no. And this will now create a new Vue project on my computer. So then I can set this task to done while I'm waiting. Great, now the project is finished setting up. So then I want to install Axios, which is a library we are going to use for talking with the backend. So just go into the project, cd invoicely vue, npm install Axios, hit enter, and while that's going forward, I can just set the task to done. And after that, I want to install Bulma, which is a CSS framework we are also going to use in this project. To do that, we just npm install Bulma, hit enter. Great, and now we have installed everything we are going to need for now. But we can run the project just to see that everything is working. npm run serve. This will start development server for Vue as well. And then I can copy this address, go to a browser, hit enter, and here you can see that the router is working and everything is as it's supposed to be. Perfect. So now I can set this task to done as well. Before I quit this part, I want to make a few more additional things. So if I just close this folder and find invoicely Vue, go into src, we have a file here called main.js. Here I have already imported a few things. This is default from Vue, but we need a few more things here because we are going to need Axios, import Axios from Axios, just like that. And then I want to configure a default URL for Axios so I don't have to think about it any other place in this project. To do that, I just say axios.defaults.base URL equals http://127.0.0.1.8000. This is the URL for the Python server which is running down here. And to make sure that we are using Axios, I also need to append it here next to the router, Axios, and save. So now every time we use Axios, we are going to use this base URL. Perfect. Next step now is to set up the store, which are going to have globally data around the web app for when you're authenticated, a little bit information about the user and similar. So this is already set up from Vue, but we need a few states here. First we want the one for the user, which can be a new object. And in here we add username, like that. And we want one property for is authenticated. This can be set default to false. And one for storing the token, like that. And to change these variables, we need something called mutations, because we can't change them automatically or directly. To do that, we add mutations. We want one for initializing the store when we open up the web app for the first time. Initialize store, and then we pass in the state. This is the default. If local storage, because we're going to use local storage to store information in the browser if you close the browser or similar. .get item token, and if it is there, we add it to the state. So then we can just state.token equals local storage.get item token. So we don't have to get it from the local storage every time we need it. And state.is authenticated will be set to true, because if you get a token, you are authenticated. else we just say state.token equals empty, just to be sure that it actually is empty. And state.isAuthenticated be set to false. Great. And then we want one function for setting the state when we log in. So set token state. Here we also need to pass in token to store this. Sorry if this is a little bit overwhelming, but you will understand more when you just start implementing this other places in the web app. Here we just say state.token equals token and state.isAuthenticated equals true. And we want one function for remove token state. Here we can just say state.token, set it to empty, and state.isAuthenticated be set to false, and save. And that is the whole store we need for now. We'll do more on this later in the project. So then this can just be saved. If you go here, everything seems to be working. Perfect. And I want to do a little change to the default app because we don't want it to look like this. So first I remove some of the default styling, and here I want to import Bulma. To do that I just say @import /node modules /Bulma. Save. This will import Bulma as the default CSS framework. And I can remove this. And in here I want to create a wrapper around all of the content. So div id wrapper. And at the top I want a navbar class navbar. Sorry, this should be nav with class navbar. And is dark, so it's dark gray I think. And first in here I want a div class navbar brand for showing the logo. And to use links in Vue, use something called router link instead of the normal href. 2 / which is the front page, class navbar item strong invoice. Close the strong and close the router link. Then we can just close the navbar brand as well. And we want the simple menu, div class navbar menu, div class navbar, and so it's all the way to the right on the side. And in here I want to check if you are authenticated, because then we want to show a different menu than if you're not authenticated. So template vif, this is an expression for checking things like an if statement. $sign store.state.is authenticated. If you are, you just want to show this menu. So router link to dashboard, we haven't created this yet, plus navbar item dashboard router link template. Close this for now before I forget it, and nav. And around the router view I want to create a section class section like that. This way we get a little bit of space above and below the content section, and save. And then below the section I want a little footer class footer p class has text centered, and here I can just say copyright C 2021 and close the footer. And here we need to talk with the store just to get the token and similar. And to do that we need to create a new element below the template but above the style. So script, which is a normal JavaScript tag. And what we want to do here is to check that if you are authenticated, we want to set some data in the Axios headers. So we need to import Axios first. Import Axios from Axios. And export default name can just be app, because this is the default app that's wrapped around the whole project. Before create, so before this component or page is created, we want to call this code this.store.commit initialize store. So now we call the function we created here, which will check if we are authenticated and similar. And below here we say const token equals this.store.state.token. So either we get a token or we just get the empty string. To check that, we say if token axios.defaults.headers.common authorization equals token plus token. So then this will automatically be passed in every time we send a request to the server. But if it's not set, we need to say else. Now we can copy this. And then we just send an empty string in the authorization to the server. So here is an error. Okay, the missing end tag. Great. Forgot to close the wrapper. Sorry if it's a little bit overwhelming now. It's much things that need to be fixed before we can actually test and see anything. But here you can see the footer we added, the nav bar, and similar. We are not authenticated now, therefore we don't see this dashboard link. But when we are not authenticated, we want to see buttons here for logging in and signing up. So we can create them now. So below here we can say template v else template. Oops, wrote it wrong. It'll be like that. And the first thing I want to add here is a link to the home page. Home. If I save now, go back, you will now see a link. This will take us not to home, so it will take us there to the root. So now it takes us there. Perfect. And then below here, I create a new div class nav bar item. And in here, I create a div class buttons, because we're going to use 2 buttons, and this class will give a little bit space between those 2 buttons. Router link to sign up. Oops. Class button is success, so it's nice and green. Strong sign up. Close the strong and close the router link. Then I can copy this so I don't have to write it all again. Log -in is light, and this doesn't have to be strong. Here I can just say log in. Okay, forgot to close these. Sorry, div/div. And now we have the sign up button and the login button, but these pages doesn't exist yet, so we just see an empty screen instead. But we can do one more thing, and that is to create a simple home view. We already have this, but we don't want it to look like this. Here you can say h1, welcome to Invoice. Close it. Don't want to use these components. Save. If I refresh here, you will see welcome to Invoice. And if I add class, title, save, it will show as a title. Perfect. And that was it for this part. In the next video, we're going to go through authentication, so we make it possible for user to sign up, log in, and log out, and also create a very simple dashboard so we have a place to send the user after they are authenticated. If you have any questions about this video, please add a comment below and I'll answer as soon as I can. If you want more content like this, you need to click like below and also subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video.